Well, hi. Welcome to the Photographer's Lair, and well, welcome to my garage. I set up a little temporary spot out here with my laptop because the kids are swimming in the pool. Well, my daughter and her best friend. So you might hear some birds and random things in the background. Whatever, enjoy. But anyway, real quick, I wanted to go over a question I had from a friend and another member of the Photographer's Lair about the Lightroom gradients, the filters. This actually was an update a year ago or so where they put everything into a masking menu. But I figured it would be a good thing to kind of review that, show you guys some of the things that you can do with this stuff in Lightroom, and give me another reason to make a new thing, newsletter, content. I got this. So we're going to go through this photo from one of my recent lighting workshops in the studio. Now, if you know anything about me, I like to keep things pretty loose and fun and energetic, and I don't always really spend the time to absolutely nail my lighting in every aspect. So this looks really good, but there's some parts of it that I'm not exactly thrilled with. Like, it's a nice dramatic thing, but like her silhouette and arm here are just blending into the background, and there's like this hand that just shows up out of nowhere. But the look and overall mood of this image I really love. So I want to use some of these tools to see what we can create. So with that in mind, before I dive into that, I'm actually going to bring the exposure up just enough to where I start seeing some of that. Bring down the contrast and highlights to try and keep that from completely blowing out. Bring up shadows so I get a little bit more of that arm. And let's see, whites I don't want to do too much with. Blacks will bring that up as well. So we've got, now we can see your arm there. Might keep tweaking it. This is just a little bit of a balancing act because, like I said, I didn't shoot it perfectly to begin with. I know everybody talks about getting it right in camera, and you know, that's nice and all, but life being what it is, I don't get it perfect every time. I'm human. Uh, and it's also just not the way I work all the time. Okay, I think that's good starting point. So if we go up here to this masking button, you'll see they've added this, add a new mask. There's select subject, which actually does what you might think. It selects your subject and creates a mask from that. There's also select sky, which won't work in this image, or it might try to work, but it's not going to find a sky. But then these three are the ones that you might be used to if you're used to previous versions of Lightroom: the brush, the linear gradient, and the radial gradient. If you want to create one of those, just click on it and it will kind of make this new little window that says new mask. And you click and drag to create your radial gradient. Now, I am going to actually zoom out just a little bit on this because I want this gradient to be outside the borders of the image here. I want to invert it first because I don't want to work on her. I actually want to work on the background, and I want to bring this feathering out a little bit. Now you can do exposure adjustments in this. And I want to keep this subtle, so I'm not going to do too much of it. I want to reduce the texture and clarity because I do want to soften up. There's some noise in the background, so I'm going to do a little bit of that, reduce the sharpness and noise just to smooth that out some. All right. Then what else can we do? Well, like you can see there's more light on this side and that side's a lot darker. So if you want to create a new mask, you come up here to this window that showed up and say create a new mask. Now I'm going to do linear gradient. And you'll see that your first mask is down here, and then you can hover over that and it'll highlight the thing in red so you see what that mask is doing. On the new mask, now I just want to come in and do something like this, and I'm going to bring that exposure down a little bit just to darken that side of the image and kind of balance it out with the other side. So that looks pretty good. And honestly, I'm pretty happy with just that. So that was a pretty quick little demo. Let's see. Come on. There we go. Get in here close. You know, there's some noise in the background here because of the exposure adjustments that I did. That's okay. You can always do some noise reduction down here. That does help quite a bit. I think I'm pretty happy with that. So now we've got that background looking pretty cool. But maybe we want to change the color of it or do something unique, like we want to create a new mask, and this time I'm going to select subject. And it will kind of think for a little bit and detect and then put a mask up on the subject, like so. But I want to work on the background, not her, so again I'm going to invert that. And we can boost the exposure or do a combination of that and adding a color, maybe. And obviously you can change the saturation of that so it's not quite so crazy. But this gives you a little bit of color grading in a sense that is specific to the background, whereas the color grading wheels that are down in the color grading section affect the entire image overall. All right. Now you'll notice you have these add and subtract buttons inside of this mask as well. And what that is an extra step or an extra layer of possibility. You can add to or subtract from this mask that you've got going on here, this one that we've got the subject selected, based on a couple different things. You can add more gradients, or you can also use luminance range. So if I want to add to this based on, say, the dark parts of our image, you can see now the shadows on her are starting to pick this up, so they'll start to take on a little bit of that blue color that we've added. And you'll see there's a slider down here and one off up on the top here. That kind of works to smooth out the transition, because if you just take this and make it a hard cut, you can see some jaggedy edges and things like that going on here. So we don't want that. Smoothing it out by separating those two, dragging in from this side and leaving this one up there, lets that transition happen in a much smoother fashion. So if we turn this on and off, you can see we're adding that blue color into not only the background, but a little bit on her shirt and the shadows in and around here. And I'm not 100% sold that I really actually want it to be that way. I like maybe even just having it only show up in the deepest, darkest shadows. Something like that, maybe. And the cool thing about this all, you can go back and fine tune it. So maybe I think, okay, after looking this, exposure on this might be too much. You can bring it back down. So we've still got a hint of that blue color back there. But now we have at least some indication of the detail there and all that kind of stuff. So using those masks, we've gone from, you can click off on these little arrows to get rid of it, or if you want to completely close it down. If you're done with the masking, just click on the masking button again and it shuts down and you have just your regular adjustments. So you can see fairly quickly from our starting point, with some basic exposure adjustments and then adding the masking, we've created what I think is a much better image overall. Now, I would take this into Photoshop, clean up some of the hairs and blemishes and enhance eyes and all those kinds of things that I do in my typical portrait workflow. But this is a great starting point for making this an incredible portrait. So I might go ahead and do that, kind of speed through that so you can see where I would actually end up with this as a finalized portrait. And okay, there you have it. We went from that to that.